Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I'd like to call this special board meeting to order of the Ross Valley Sanitary District. Roll call, please.
Director Meggs? Here. Director Silla?
Here.
Director Wilson?
Here.
Director Gaffney?
Here.
Director Kelly?
Here.
And Pledge of Allegiance. Where's the flag? There it is. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And with that, we're going to adjourn to closed session here, back open at 5:30 p.m. So at this point, the special board meeting of the Ross Valley Sanitary District will reconvene to open session, and we have nothing to report out tonight. Item 6, approval of agenda.
Do we want to move Mark Hildebrand up?
No, they have a reason for their madness here, and they
Okay.
said no.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
do I hear a motion?
I move the agenda?
Yeah, we don't want to change anything.
Nope.
Yeah, I move, we accept the agenda.
Second. We need a second.
Second.
And we need Doug. Well, we don't need Doug. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have 4. Doug is MIA. He'll be back, but we can go ahead. Open time for public to raise items not on the agenda or for future agendas. Anyone willing to address the Board of Directors on matters within the board's jurisdiction, but not on the posted agenda, may do so. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. The board may not take action on or discuss items not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements or questions by a member of the public. The board president may refer any matter to staff for further follow-up or elect to have the matter placed on an agenda for a future meeting. Do we have anybody anywhere? Does not look like it. So committees report out. Finance Committee. Tom, you want to?
Okay, the Finance Committee met yesterday, and we went over a number of items. One was just a brief discussion about possibly converting to a 2-year budget, which would save a lot of staff time. And that probably will be brought forward at a future board meeting. We looked at the monthly financials, the 7th month of the year. They remain in very good financial condition.
Great.
And then we covered a lot of the items that we're going to talk about tonight, including a real estate, hiring real estate people to help us. And a big contract was awarded for construction for our gravity sewer project for this year. And I think another really important item was settling a continuing land use matter. I think it's Pump Station 14 with the Larkspur Corte Madera School District. It's been going on since 2008, and we've got a resolution on that. Anything else? We did cover some of these other items, which we're going to go over tonight.
Yeah.
Is the 2-year budget idea something that could happen in this next budget cycle? Yes, that was the recommendation of staff in the presentation to the Finance Committee.
And we'll talk about it there, but when we discuss it.
Yeah,
But
it's something,
CMSA is doing that currently.
Oh.
And it's worked out very well.
and we did put it on our business plan as part of our strategic planning for this year to evaluate it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Business Plan Committee.
You know, I don't have the business plan in front of me. We reviewed the business plan. We looked at adjustments for the coming year, but I don't have it in front of me and I can't really give you a lot of details. If you want to put it back on next month, I'll redo that.
I brought it, but I'm not.
Did you talk about the 2-year budget?
Very quickly.
Your microphone's not on, I don't think.
Let's
I
go on.
have it, but I'm not really that prepared to go over it.
Let's just do
So
it next
if you
week
could
or next
wait
month.
next month, that would be wonderful.
Okay, CMSA, you want to
Yeah, I
start
have
it off,
that. I got
Doug?
that right in front of me. So I always need these in front of me to do this. We got 4 awards for the Redwood Empire section, which was really good. We got the Community Engagement and Outreach Program of the Year, the Electrical Instrument Technician of the Year, Tony Drady, the Operator of the Year, Mike Silva, and Murray McKinney Award, which is an operator and trainer, Cody Levesque. Cody came on as kind of a yard maintenance person and has now been trained and is working as a first level technician. And so that's the kind of operator and training award. So that was really excited about that. They each get $100 and it goes on to from Redwood to the state awards. So we'll see where that goes. We received a report on the organic waste receiving and power delivery program. That's kind of a very technical report on how much organic waste we're taking in and how much power we're generating over there, and a lot. So, we're saving millions of dollars in power. Also, we learned that our 2 anaerobic digesters do still have a lot of ability to take in more, which, when I look at the tons they take in per day, I'm like, how can we take more? But they're like, give us more. And so a lot of places want to, and this comes up later, a lot of places want to bring us their food waste. And basically Jason's like, come on, bring them on. We're making them pay. It's not a lot of money, but we take the money and then we generate money. So it's a win-win for us. So it's really great. It's a really interesting report.
Right now, we're currently bringing in more revenue than we're spending to produce it, the power. So it is a profit center for the agency.
We renewed for another year, and we may do it year after year after year until we need the space. Our Marin Airporter arrangement. This was a plan that was originally proposed by Mike, and I'm very happy about that. So they needed somewhere to park their buses, which is why they wanted this property. And so they park in the back. And now if we either have to do a nutrient removal or if we have, or we do a DPR, we'll need to kick them out, but that's not going to be for years. So which generates about 70 grand a year. So it's money in the bank. We also are sending out bids to do some pavement repair on campus over there at CMSA. So some of the roads need to be repaired, re-slurried, restriped. So we're putting out a bid. We expect it to be about 300 grand. And then we did make an arrangement with Sustainable Organic Solutions of Santa Clara, and they want to bring us their food waste.
But they do it in a different way. They bring it up as a slurry.
Yep.
Rather than as a
What they do,
solid.
yes, what they do is they take expired foods. I don't know from whom. I'm assuming grocery stores, and they unpackage them and flip them into a slurry, put them on a 5,000 gallon truck and truck them up. And so we have a contract with them. Santa Clara. Yeah. And with this, the attorney for CMSA had taken a original East Bay mud contract, which was huge, and we're like, we don't need all this. So they kind of brought it down to some 126. Is that right? 126? No, 28 pages. And this will be the genesis for this very same deal with anybody else who wants to bring us more organic waste. And again, what they're saying is because we had it almost at full capacity when one of the 2 anaerobic digesters was being redone. So basically we can double our intake. And if we ever do put a DPR, we're probably going to need to buy another GenBack generator, and because we can only sell 1,000 kilowatts, is it?
100 megawatts.
100 megawatt.
1 megawatt.
1 megawatt of power back to
So our Genbacher generator is rated at 995 kilowatts. So we don't break any rules. But if it became so beneficial and worthwhile, we can bring Genbacher in and they can undo the restrictions on the generator. And I think it can be rated at 1.5 megawatts originally, but we throttled it down. Eli brought up an interesting point excuse me, on the pavement thing. In Corte Madera that none of us had ever heard about. In Corte Madera now, they have a new kind of pavement resurfacing thing that they do, but it's very, very light in color. So instead of absorbing for atmospheric warming, it's, and the only complaint they got was that people think it's falling apart too fast because all of a sudden the undersurface comes up, but that's just normal wear and tear.
And the other surface is darker.
So at some point, if we have to ever in the years forward resurface this, we might look at that because that sounded like there's no downside to it, same cost, same everything. So. Think that's it, Doug?
That's it.
Okay. North Bay Watershed Association.
Okay, Christina, it's going to be kind of an experiment. I sent her 3 emails with some information, so we'll try it. If not, I have some notes. Sorry? Yeah, let's look at the map.
Oh, I had one more thing. I'm so sorry. Can I
We'll
go
go
back
for
to Siemens A? We hired Corey Spray. We're thrilled over there. Not so thrilled over here.
You took Corey?
Yeah.
That was bad.
I know.
Corey
Really
went.
bad.
No. Corey went.
I have to talk to you after. Okay. I guess it won't move, but this is a new website, the one with the water. Okay, so we'll just scroll up for time. Go to the map. So here we are. I think I brought this, I don't know, a few months back, but it's more than 2,000 miles. And a lot of it is Marin, Sonoma. We now have Vallejo, Solano, Napa, American Canyon. I just think this map makes it very clear our watersheds, which is very helpful to understand how we're so very interconnected. And we keep getting more members. We're growing. So let's see if we can go on this website anymore, Christina. Probably not. Oh, okay. If you could stop at the conference. Here is the conference, April 19th. Please mark your calendars. It's going to be awesome at Sonoma State. We are working with their staff. It's going to be very different and unique. We're also creating like a space for jobs that how young people can start looking at for working in water, and it could be wastewater too. And it's just, I don't know how to say it. So I'm on the committee and there's 4 or 5 of us and we meet, I don't know, a couple times a month. And I'm going to ask to put on the agenda for next month if we could give a pledge. I think it's maybe $1,500 or more from all the members, but anybody can do a pledge. I don't know about tickets yet. We're still working on that. Okay, and if you could scroll up, Christina, let's see if there's anything else on this website. I don't think, and then I had one more email, I think. Oh, there was a brochure that opened up to the conference, if you can find it. All right, Christina. Okay. So this is a preliminary brochure we're working on, and the title will be Imagine Our Future North Bay. And then I think Jared Huffman will be there. We're still inviting the higher ups, if you want to call them that. And so some of it is going to be on an ecological sense. Some of it will be on, like I said, we're looking at how can we integrate bringing young people into what we're doing. And here's some of our sponsors. And it's still being worked on. The food will be good. I'll tell you, we really talked a lot about the food. Okay, so anyway, we met on February 2nd. It was a 2-hour meeting. We had 2 guest speakers. Jean Mariani is still the chair. we had a presentation on Intro to the North Bay Baylands Regional Conservation Investment Strategy. It was a brief overview of the draft of RCIS planning sessions in preparation for a deeper dive presentation in May. Both the guest speakers they were more on information. And then the second guest speaker was an outlook for a roundtable of regions and integrated regional water management. It's Irwin, which helps create, if I remember correctly, grants and helps watershed kind of be integrated with different funds all over, and you apply for grants. And Andy did his executive report. I believe our treasury has about 600,000. And after the conference, we're going to start working on scholarships. Thank you.
Verbal report by general manager.
Great. Thank you, board members. We've got 4 items. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly because we've got a pretty full agenda. So on the first one, I just want to give the board an update on site work. This last month we've completed the decorative fencing. Mostly there's some gate work still to be done. The boardroom logo is up this month, as well as our podium. Our HVAC is working better. We had some issues. Next month, we expect to have the power washing and the awning put on, so it'll be a little more finished and finished landscaping. The power gates for the secured parking area, our outdoor lighting, and charging stations are all still to be done, but hopefully make significant progress in the next month. Okay, so second item. Last Friday, we met with the city of Larkspur representatives, city manager, and the community development director about their proposed ordinance for the Larkspur landing site and the housing element considerations. Currently, there's no public meeting scheduled for the housing element and general plan because the city recently received a notice about their housing element. It was like a rejection of their proposed housing element from the Housing and Community Development Department, HCD. So the state had a lot of comments. So they're formulating their response. So they don't have a scheduled public meeting at this time, but we'll probably hear in the next couple of weeks when that's going to happen. So they're stalled in some ways, but the conversation was productive, in terms of back and forth with the city, and they're listening to us. They're taking seriously our comments on their proposed ordinance, which is the rezoning of the property. In essence, we can't really take the next step of doing the Surplus Lands Act process until the property is rezoned. So we were able to remind the city of that we're ready to move when they complete their process. Next item, third, we met with the San Rafael Sanitation District on February 5th. And we met about their strategic initiative to recruit and retain skilled employees. That's what they're working on. And that's the purpose of their strategic initiative they began about a year ago, to really look at options because they're having a hard time holding on to folks. So we met with Doris Toy, the district manager, and Paul Causey, their consultant. Felicia and I met. City manager. SRSD's district manager is Doris Toy. And just the high level update on this is SRSD wants to separate from the city of San Rafael so they can establish competitive salary and benefits for their employees. They are 25 to 30% below market. They've considered 6 options. They've narrowed things down to one option of developing a shared services agreement with either CMSA or RVSD. All other options have been ruled out at this time. Basically, to distill what they want to do, they want to replace services that SRSD relies on the city of San Rafael to provide. I think that's a fair summary of what, and when we talk about, there's a lot of detail to that. Currently, the city of San Rafael provides human resources, payroll, IT services, training, GIS. They provide facilities, office, parking, fleet, or parking for the fleet, other digital, safety. So there's a lot of things that the city provides. And so when we talk about providing these shared services, it's very complex. But they contract separately for other things like legal and AR, AP, and accounting and that sort of thing that they would continue to do outside of a shared services agreement. So there's a lot of detail there.
Steve, who does their sewer cleaning and maintenance?
They do it in-house.
And they have a staff that does that.
Yes.
And they want to continue to do that?
Yes, they do.
I thought they wanted to take them off of the Public Works Department.
No, they want to separate continue to be SRSD and do what they do, which they do quite excellently.
Okay.
They have a great O&M department. They've got a strong engineering department, and they want to have competitive salary and benefits for their employees.
Right. So wait, don't they use Public Works employees, but they only use them as needed? Is that what it is? They call out and say I need something done?
No, they have SRSD employees.
Okay. How many are there?
17, I believe, or 15, something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's complicated. Those are great questions. It's, each city district, dependent districts, they'll have different arrangements, but we've learned through this meeting about what arrangements they have, what they're looking for in a shared services agreement. So I'm meeting with CMSA on Friday to discuss their level of interest in providing shared services to SRSD. And we're going to go from there, and we'll keep you updated on what next steps might be working with San Rafael Sanitation District. That sound good? All right, finally, the fourth item. I think it's worth noting that on January 19th, this is in regard to the cease and desist order that was issued to this district in 2013. On January 19th, the Water Board notified us that we are no longer have to comply with any provisions in the cease and desist order. But they won't rescind the cease and desist order until 2 specific capital projects are constructed. And so I think it's great news.
Which two?
And at any rate, let me continue my
All right.
update.
I know that was a complicated question.
So I'd like to complete the report. The reinspection, there's some prescriptive requirements that are in this order that really constrain our operations and capital program that the Water Board has ended. One of them is reinspection of pipe defects on an aggressive 3- and 5-year cycle that is unnecessarily aggressive, and it takes up our time. Number 2, we have a requirement for a minimum of 4 miles of rehabilitation per year. That can lead to unintended consequences of rushing things and using methods for construction or repair that we've had to go back and fix. So getting rid of a prescriptive 4-mile requirement, which also put us into a lot of debt to be able to meet that requirement, that is no longer required, and we no longer have to do annual reports. And so what this does is we can now set our own goals and our own expectations for O&M program based on our IMP, which is risk-based, as well as our capital program. So they won't officially rescind until we complete 2 more projects on the Winship Bridge in Ross and a relief sewer in downtown Fairfax. They still want us to complete those. So for all practical purposes, this enforcement order has ended, but its rescission will be a routine administrative action probably in a couple of years, unless staff change their mind, because they do want us to present to the board the success of this program as a good model for how a district can turn around. So the discussion's ongoing, but the good news is that we don't have to comply with rigid requirements anymore.
That's great news.
And that's it for my update. Thank you.
Okay, item 11, consent calendar. Does anyone of you want to pull anything? It's a very light consent calendar.
The verbal report.
Oh, I'm sorry. My hand was covering that. Verbal report by board members and requests for future items. Any board members?
I already asked for next month, and I'll bring you the information from North Bay Watershed about the pledge. That was it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Let's move on to the consent calendar. I'll read it. Nobody's here. Doesn't matter. Matters listed under this item are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. The consent calendar may include resolutions. Therefore, the motion, second, and vote will also be applicable to the resolutions and recorded accordingly. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless requested by a board member or the public prior to the time the board votes on the motion to adopt. Does anybody want to pull anything off the consent calendar? If not, do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the consent.
I'll
Anybody?
second.
Tom seconds. Everybody in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, consideration of adopting. Consideration of authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of council to execute a contract for real estate services with Newmark.
Yes, thank you, President Borstein and board members. This item has two example agreements that we could sign with Newmark, who, as the staff report reminds us, we worked with before to successfully purchase this building and work out the terms of the Comcast lease over a period of 2 years. So to move forward and working with them as our representative, they reasonably require a commitment from us to sign a contract. And so we gave you an example of their current contract for both lease sale and for as a buyer representative. So those are attached as examples. We're not asking you to sign a contract today or to authorize a specific action that you would sign today, but we're asking you to authorize me and staff to work out the details of these contracts and then move forward with them as our buyer representative in the case that's necessary, or lease sale representative, for instance, for the 2960 Kerner property. So that's the one thing that we talked about a little bit in finance committee, is that there are some dials you can turn and you can direct us to consider staff as we finalize an agreement on lease sale or as buyer representatives. And that is to look at, for instance, the commission percentages that are suggested. And we talked briefly about this, but on board packet page 55, or actually 53, board packet page 53 at the bottom under the sale and lease example agreement, under 6A, it's amount of sale commission. This term would have a 6% commission, which gets split by our representative, our broker, which would be Newmark, and whoever the buyer's representative would be. So it'd be 3% each. So that's one of those conditions that they're suggesting and that is negotiable. In addition, the next page, it's the condition compensation for the lease of the property on board packet page 54. You can see a stepwise approach where for the tenancy for the first 24 months, it's 6% of the total base rental gets is the commission rate. And then the next 2 years, or I'm sorry, the next 12 months after the first 2 years, it steps down to a 5% commission. And so, and then 4% for the next 2 years, and then 3% for the balance of whatever lease agreement is signed. So say, whoever the lessee is among the different ones we've talked about, this is what Newmark's proposed structure is for commission on that type of an arrangement. So at any rate, we do seek your direction and any discussion you want to have on those points, because we're aware, that those are the areas you may have an opinion on. This is Newmark's proposal. I think we think it's generally reasonable and an industry standard. But we're not saying that you have to just accept that.
Also just talked about that yesterday in Finance Committee. And, originally when we bought the building, we thought we'd have this lease agreement knocked out in like minutes. And it turned out to be a 4 or 5 year project. And my understanding is that Newmark did not charge us for any of that time over the past 4 or 5 years in working with Comcast. So they have been extraordinarily good to us. And
I wanted to ask it actually, I mean, you said these are options, but the vote would be to authorize you to execute the contract, which legally means sign. So are we supposed to give you direction about what we want these to say so that you could execute them on our behalf?
It's up. Yes. We invite your input if you feel strongly or, want to direct us in a certain way. Currently what's here, I think staff, we're prepared to execute on behalf of the district, just like any other contract we bring before you. We bring you a draft and you approve it, and then your signatures are on it. In this case, we're asking you to authorize the general manager to sign the contract.
Tom has a.
Well, one of the things we discussed in finance was when we bought this building, we didn't pay the real estate commission because we were the purchaser, but the seller pays the commission. But for this building, the percentage, which would compare to that on page 53, was 4%, but it was on a much larger sale price. So a 6% on a, say, like a $2.5 million building is more reasonable than a 4%. But most contracts we heard about, like if it gets over 10 million, then they'll drop the commission down. So I think the 6% for Kerner is, if we sell that, that's a reasonable commission.
I don't have any issues about the rates right now, but is this the right time that we need to sign this? We haven't decided what we're doing.
Well, that's why we have the option. In other words, they want a commitment from us that we're working with them.
That's fine. I have no problem with that.
And we don't have to sign either one yet. I guess we don't know what we're doing.
Okay, I'm on board with that.
But what about the month-to-month lease arrangements? I don't have any feel for those at all. So if it's a 2, 3, 4, 5, they would get.
Are these standard? I mean, are these boilerplate? This is what they send out. Okay.
Total base.
So my guess is there's not really that much opportunity to negotiate. We're actually we're saying they're our sole representatives with respect to Kerner. Okay.
My question is then, let's say we do lease it, would they continue to manage the lease, or what would happen?
This is just a commission structure for them to be paid to negotiate the actual lease. And then in terms of property management and facility management, that would be part of the lease structure and to be determined. So no, they wouldn't be involved in the lease past the execution of the actual lease. But this provides for them payment of that. So say, for example, if the lease was $10,000 a month, they'd get, whatever that is, $600 for the first $600 a month for the first 2 years. So times 24. So that's $14,000 for that first 2-year term, right? Et cetera, going on down the term for the term of the lease is how this works.
Okay. I don't have anything to compare, or I haven't a clue. So I guess we're not jumping the gun to go out and do this tomorrow. So, yeah, okay.
And then with respect to attachment B, is that ripe at this point?
Okay, B is the,
Buyer represented, yes. And it's relevant if in the mix of things, it gives us flexibility to trade properties, for instance. So, if there's someone who's interested in Kerner that has another property that we could potentially make use of, because as we've discussed, for 8.5 years, Comcast occupies half of the property here, and we are still present at the Larkspur Landing site, and Kerner presents a backstop for us in case something moved quickly at Larkspur Landing. We'd have a place to go at Kerner. Maybe there's another property that's closer here. All of those different potential, eventualities. It gives us flexibility so that not only do we have an agreement on lease sale, but we have the ability to purchase property if it makes sense from an operational standpoint.
And really the most important thing about this is that this says we're working with Newmark. We're not shopping around for
Yeah,
real estate
correct.
And
agents.
I'm fine with that. They've done great work for us. That's fantastic.
I have one question. Is there a term on this contract? Do we,
Yeah, it's till the end of the year, end of
it's
calendar.
just, where does it say? I didn't see. it.
At the very beginning, first paragraph, it says
It's 1 year.
expiring on, until December 31st,
What
the end
page
of
are
this,
you on?
1 of 11, board packet number 52. It's the very first paragraph.
And also on board packet 63. So it's board packet 52
Oh, I
for
see.
attachment
There
A
it is. Yeah.
and board packet 63 for
That's good.
attachment
Okay,
B.
It's got a term on it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I move, unless there's
Any
more.
further discussion? Do I hear a motion? Tom?
I'll move that we authorize the general manager to assign, to sign an appropriate contract, but that we're committed to working with Newmark.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're good.
Hi.
Oh, and by the way, this does not include Larkspur Landing. We've made that clear,
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's for Kerner.
Okay. Item 13, the staff, consideration of adopting resolution number 24-1651, adopting a mitigated negative declaration for fiscal year 23-24 gravity sewer improvements project number 955. Mr. Moore.
Yes, I'll introduce the item. We do have Phil Benedetti here remotely. He was not feeling great today, so he's joining us remotely. And then we also have Bridget DeShields from Integral Environmental, who has been helping us with environmental disclosure and documentation for our projects for several years. And it's good to have you. I see Bridget on the screen there. And so this is one of several items related to this project tonight. It's good to get things underway for as part of our capital improvement program, a major gravity sewer improvement project with a package of items. Well, with that comes potential environmental impacts, and the staff report goes over the project description, generally where the project's located. Subsequent board items have maps. The board item proposing award of the contract has project area maps that you can refer to in Fairfax,
Item
San, and
14.
that's item 14. Fairfax, San Anselmo, and Greenbrae areas. So as with most of our rehabilitation projects, the gravity sewer potential impacts really revolve around biological resources and cultural resources. And so this document, which is not in the packet, we have a link that you can click on to get the full environmental review of all the different areas that where we're working. But generally, no significant potential impacts as usual with a replacement of existing infrastructure. So we're happy to present this to you and the public as far as the disclosure of environmental impacts, and happy to answer any questions. I know, Bridget, if you have any comments you'd like to make about this package of rehabilitation proposals.
As Steve said, the main impacts that we usually see from these projects are biological and cultural. And we do work with the Federated Indians of Great Rancheria, consult with them on the project. There are some areas of cultural sensitivity, and they'll be involved with testing and monitoring as we implement the project.
Hi, Bridget. Question. Do you know, I mean, what about spotted owls or anything like that in the area? That's part of your research, right?
Yes, and we didn't find any significant biological resources. As Steve mentioned, there are some consistent with our previous conversations with California Fish and Wildlife. There'll be some surveys for rare plants in areas where those could potentially occur, and then we will do a nesting bird survey for each area prior to, we have to do at least a week, within a week of start of construction. And then if the construction lags, we have to go back out and check for nesting birds. So nesting bird measures are part of the measures that are part of the mitigation measures for the project.
So nesting birds, I can't remember, is it July? It starts or ends in July? I can't.
It ends at the end of August.
August. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Tom has a question, please.
Yeah, I'm sure all the board members turned to and read the report that referenced. It's 222 pages long. But actually, there are 6 things that are mitigated. And Pamela, you hit one of them. They ground disturbed during construction and avoid during nesting season and all kinds of things like that. So it is, a very complete document. And I'm glad you didn't include it because anyway,
had a negative impact on trees.
and it deserves a negative impact. Yeah, most of the answers was, is there a impact? And it's no.
Right.
And then for 6 of them, it's possible but mitigatable or something like that. Minor impact but mitigatable, and that's where we are in this.
Yeah, and we didn't.
Is that correct, Bridget?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I should have mentioned in my overview that we received no public comments on
That I read.
the document, which, yeah, we pay attention to that. I think the last time we did a package of gravity sewer projects, we did get comments from Fish and Wildlife about rare plants. And we followed up on that and did necessary surveys. And so that we could say confidently at the end of the project, there were no impacts that were significant. So,
And nobody complained from Fairfax.
Yeah.
well, we'll see, right? That's last time we weren't really in Fairfax so much.
Oh.
This time we will be. So,
And as you know, it is a federal law if those birds get messed up. I mean, it's a huge thing, but anyway, I'm glad you're on it. Thank you.
yeah, I think Bridget touched on this, but we do review for all of the sensitive species, and this particular footprint of work does not intersect with spotted owl habitat.
Good. Anybody else?
I move we adopt resolution number 24/1651, adopting a mitigated negative declaration for the fiscal year 23-24 gravity sewer improvements project.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, everybody unanimous. Off to item number 14 here now. Item 14, consideration of awarding and authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of council to execute construction contract for the fiscal year 23-24 gravity sewer improvements project number 955 with Glossage Engineering, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $994,971.
Very good.
General Manager Moore, please.
I'm just seeing if Phil is available.
Yeah,
Oh, yes,
I'm
good.
here.
Very
I'm,
good. Excellent. Yeah, so this is the proposed contract to be awarded to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Glossage. And I think with that, I could hand it over to Phil to just give an overview, but it is below engineer's estimate. I will say that. So it keeps us within our capital improvement project budget. So Phil.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Steve. So the bids for the project were opened January 4th, and we received 2 bids. And the lowest bid was from Glossage Engineering for $5,994,971. The engineer's estimate was around $6.4 million. So with that, normally we like to see a few more bids than that. We typically will see, between 5 and 7 bids on a project, but this one being over the holiday, I think that the bidding was a little bit, people were busy doing other things than getting new work. But the the fact that they came in under engineer's estimate and that this is a known good contractor, I don't see any issues with it. The project is looking to get started. The contractor is looking to get started here. Notice to proceed if awarded to them, construction would begin in the next couple of weeks. Notice to proceed could happen as early as next week. So the contractor is very motivated to get going. I'd like to try and share my screen with the areas. I haven't done this for a bit. Is it showing up there for you guys?
Yes.
All right. So the project includes 4,097 feet of pipe getting replaced in Fairfax and 14 manholes. So you can see some of those areas here. There is some easements all the way out up on Bolinas, off of Bolinas Road, coming down off of another side street off of Bolinas in that area of Fawn Ridge down to Wood Lane, where we've had some overflow or spill issues in the past. We have some other easements closer to downtown, including a tricky section along Berry Trail. And then we also have some areas that are closer to downtown, so along Sir Francis Drake, and then Taylor Drive, and an easement, a steep easement going up to Rocca Drive. These pipes, a lot of them were identified by conditions assessment to have a good number of defects along Sir Francis Drake and some high frequency cleaning lines on Berry Trail and heading out toward Bolinas. These are very distant high frequency cleaning lines that our crews have to travel all the way out to Fairfax to take care of. So we're taking care of some of those more challenging easements in that area. Moving on to San Anselmo, we're replacing back out so it's not too cluttered there, but we're replacing 5,259 linear feet of pipe, and 8 manholes. A good amount of pipe for that project is along Ross Avenue, so heading kind of into the downtown area of San Anselmo. Runs in front of the Wade Thomas Elementary School and heading up into some of the neighborhoods here that joins up with some other projects that had done work, previous projects that had done work along Mariposa and Austin. And this more or less ties that whole area together. There's a number of high frequency cleaning lines in that area as well. And then the last area of work is in Greenbrae, which we are set to replace 6,058 linear feet of pipe, with 17 manholes getting replaced. And these are also a host of high frequency cleaning pipes, some overflow issues that had resulted of some bends in the pipe on an easement, steep easement coming down from to Almanar. We had some overflow issues here. And then these are high frequency cleaning lines along the back of Almanar, as well as up on Almanar Drive itself, with multiple challenging easements for our crews to clean. There was an overflow issue in the Los Cerros area here, and we're actually going to be installing 264 linear feet of new pipe along Los Cerros Drive in this area. And that is to help relieve the low sewer main through this area that you have an issue where the hydraulic grade line during big storms can jump up and out of people's hopefully out of people's backwater prevention devices now, but previously it resulted in some private property damage in this area. So we're looking to address that by installing a new sewer main along Los Cerros and directing the flow down that way. And then also there are some other easements along this area that we believe are big contributors to inflow and infiltration in the Green Bay Redwoods area, and some high frequency cleaning lines that go back behind the easement along Los Cerros. So that's the project overview there in a nutshell, but yeah, Glossage Engineering is the apparent low bidder, and we've had a great track record with them. And they've been skilled at moving through challenging easements and difficult traffic control sections. I can't think of a better contractor to perform this work, where we're going to be in Sir Francis Drake doing some difficult pipe bursting. We want a contractor that knows what they're doing and can move quickly. And that's definitely Glossage Engineering. So with that, I'll leave it up to you guys for questions.
A question. I said it's 15,384 feet, which is about 2.93 miles. The project's about $2,215,806 per mile. Does that sound about right?
Doesn't sound off. Of course, you got to.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Phil. You also got to look at other costs too, not just the
Like the
construction
manhole.
costs,
Yeah,
but
you
the
did, yeah.
design costs.
I put the design cost in.
Oh, okay. And construction management, which we're gonna
I put that in.
consider. Yeah. So it might be, doesn't sound wrong.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I put the next item into the math.
Good.
Okay.
Anybody else? Tom?
Well, it seems like every time we do a project with Glossage, we find something else to do. And I asked if their unit prices are good,
Mhm.
you know, because if we ask them to do extra, we'd like to have low unit prices. And evidently, Phil said they were pretty good. So,
Okay.
you know, in case that comes up.
Yeah, if somebody's on site doing work and we find something we didn't know because we dug up a road, keep going.
Yeah, while you're there.
Pam, Mary?
Just a quick question for Phil. The Fairfax projects, these are gnarly places you fix. When are you going to do all this? When's it going to start and when's it going to end? Approximate.
So the contract the contract length is 260 calendar days, but knowing this contractor, they will make short work of this. I would not be surprised if they were complete, if we were at the notice of completion board meeting in about 6 months. If we were just doing Fairfax area by area right now, I believe the contractor is leaning towards starting in the Greenbrae area here, but they may also begin on some of these easements in Fairfax. I'm working with them to kind of determine their baseline schedule. Assuming that they will be awarded the contract, they would prepare that baseline schedule for us. And we're also coordinating where their work is going to start with the previous items mentioned, bird surveys as well. But is there a particular area in Fairfax that you would like me to sort of talk about in terms of the duration for these?
Some of those are dead end streets and they're very narrow, as you know. But also,
Yes.
they recently talked at their council that they're talking about doing a bond for roads because Fairfax roads are the worst in Marin County. So you should probably check in with, Lauren, the
Yes.
Public Works. I don't know when all this is going to happen, but it'd be nice to coordinate something. So we're not ripping up
Yes.
the road twice.
Yeah. We've coordinated with the town of Fairfax with Lauren regarding this plan of work. We are going to coordinate some of this work along Taylor Drive. I believe they're going to be paving. It becomes Klaus at one point, but they are doing some paving work along Taylor and Klaus, and we have we've been collaborating with their engineers that are designing for that, and timing so far looks good. I think they'll be paving the road not before we tear up the road.
Oh, good.
I'm
Thank
assuming you're going to do
you.
Ross after school's closed, Ross Avenue.
Yes, the plan right now is to postpone to try and delay the work on Ross Avenue to the summertime.
Right.
And as well, the Sir Francis Drake that goes by Marin Catholic and Basich.
Yes, ideally we would also save this bit for the summer season as well.
Right.
So if the contractor gets to a point or that they would want to perform this before that, they have restricted work hours in their encroachment permits, so they could get in there for limited parts of the day to do some work, but that's all to mitigate the amount of traffic congestion that I'm sure you guys are familiar with in the Basich Marin Catholic area.
Anybody else?
I'll make a motion.
Doug has
So
a
I'd
motion.
move to award and authorize the general manager upon review and approval of council to execute construction contract for the fiscal year 23-24 gravity sewer improvement project, which is project number 955, with Glossage Engineering Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $5,994,971.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous vote. Item
you.
number 15. Consideration of approving and authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of council to approve task order, number 10 with Somas Inc. for construction management services for the fiscal year 23-24 gravity sewer improvements project number 955 in the total amount of $497,343.
All right, thank you, President Borstein. And for this item, we do have a guest, right, from Somas, as Mr. Post. Thank you for joining us today. Normally Somas, we've been working with for construction management, and they are proposed for this project on several of recent projects in the last few years. You're usually used to seeing Justin Seufert here representing Somas as a project manager. He's moved to Northern California. I think he still works for the company, but not available to have hands-on. But Garrett Post is here from Somas, who's worked with the company for over 2 decades, I'm guessing. Yes. Yeah, but maybe the previous version, not Somas, but the Cavello group or somebody else, right? So you can explain all that when you introduce yourself to the board. I'll just say that we're confident going into this project. You've seen it. Phil did a lovely job of going over all the sites where we're going to work, and Glossage we have confidence in dealing with some difficult situations, and we have confidence in Somas. The team has worked with us on the Pump Station 14 project very successfully recently, but they've also worked with Glossage, so they know the pace of work. They know how to keep it reined in. Sometimes part of the construction management job is to keep the contractor going, right, and to beat deadlines of rain and everything else. In the case of Glossage, it's a different challenge to sometimes maybe even have them slow down a little bit, just to make sure that the neighborhood is caught up with things and so forth. And so Somas is familiar with the pace of work and how to work with Glossage, how to make it productive and seamless. And so we're glad to have this team available to be able to serve the district's capital program needs. And so we encourage you to consider their proposal. We, evaluating the budget, it's very reasonable within the frame of what we expect as a % of construction costs. So, and then we invite Garrett to come up, maybe introduce himself, but then also Phil, if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, I don't have very much to add. I'll let Garrett introduce himself.
Phil and General Manager Moore. So happy to be here tonight.
Is that mic on? Oh, it sounds like it is.
Maybe I have to get a little closer, but happy to be here tonight. And as General Manager Moore said, replacing Justin for project management in this area. But looking forward to working with Ross Valley again. And I'm happy to let you know that we have some of our core staff that was on the previous projects that is available to be on this project as well. So we'll have that continuity for like the service that we have been providing, and looking forward to it. If you have any questions.
No.
No, thank you for.
I thought I was going to miss Justin's accent, but it seems like we've got another accent. So thank you.
Yeah, it's great.
Comments or questions from the board? No, normally.
All right.
Normally, the construction management is roughly 10% of the construction costs, and it's right in there. So
It's actually less, so I think that's good. I'd move to approve and authorize the general manager upon review and approval of council to approve task order number 10 with Somas Inc. for construction manager services for the fiscal year 23-24 gravity sewer improvements project 955 in the total amount of $497,343.
I'll second.
Tom seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You're welcome to go as you please or hang around as you like.
Okay, item number 16. We spent a lot of time at the finance committee, and one of the questions we had at the end was how deep delving into this did we want Ira to go tonight? And so I think we chose, because we spent a lot of time on it yesterday. He's going to hit the main points and whatever questions we have in addition to that, because otherwise we could do a 2014 meeting where we stayed until midnight. So item number 16, consideration of accepting the fiscal year 2023 defined pension benefit pension and OPEB actuarial reports as presented and discussion on the district's retirement obligation funding plans.
Felicia, could you introduce this? Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager Moore and Board of Directors. I actually am going to make a very brief introductory remarks, which is really just to say that we're pleased to report that the district's financial positions in terms of its pension and OPEB liabilities are already in the high ranges that the board has been expecting over the last few years. Of course, we do these presentations once annually to the board to give you an idea of what the market experience has been and what the expected contributions for the coming budget year will be to maintain that. I know we've had many discussions about whether it's 90% or 95% or 100% funded for each of these liabilities. And so with this presentation tonight in February, we're looking forward to getting the update from IRA and then making our recommendations to the board in terms of what our budgetary contributions will be when we start developing our budget for the coming fiscal year. Actually, it would be maybe the biannual budget. That's the right term for it. So with that, again, just very brief introductory remarks. I'd like to turn it over to Ira to, as Director Borstein mentioned, do a very high-level overview and answer any questions that the board may have about our current financial position in pension and OPEB liabilities. Thank you.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. So again, I will try and keep this under the 5-hour limit that you had talked about before. And just go over the key points that we have here. So, and again, if you've got questions, stop me, ask the questions. I'm guessing I'll have the information on the slides that I may have skipped over. I'm basically on the pension side, I'm gonna hit on a couple big things. First, I want to sort of let you know how you're doing to how you're doing compared to other agencies throughout California. When I do that, we're going to do it based on two metrics: funded percentage. So how are you doing your funding against target? It's your plan assets divided by your plan liabilities. Those are calculated as of June 30, 2022. And the reason that we picked that date is because that's the date of the most recent actuarial valuation report released by CalPERS. They released that report in August of 2023. That's the report that's used to calculate your required contribution for the upcoming fiscal year for 24-25. So that's one metric. Second metric is your contribution percentage, your actuarially determined contribution, the amount you're required to pay divided by your pensionable compensation. That way we can compare you against agencies of a variety of different sizes. We're doing it for the contribution coming up in fiscal year 24-25. We are comparing you against other small agencies that are in what CalPERS refers to as a risk pool. Those are the ones with 100 or fewer than 100 active members in their plans at this point. You have two basically plans: your classic plan for people hired 2012 and before, and the pepper plan for people hired 2013 and after. What we basically found for almost all of this is you're basically right in the pack if we do not include your 115 trust. And again, this is just the amounts that CalPERS has and has access to. If we do not include your 115 trust, you're at 70.4% funded. You're right where most of the agencies in California are at that point in time. Your contribution rate for Classic, a little bit higher than average. And the reason for that, the contribution is a combination of your normal cost, your ongoing cost for each year of service, plus a payment to catch up to amortize the unfunded liability. And then we spread that over the payroll. Because you have had more movement from your Classic to your PEPRA group, that means the Classic cost, the amortization cost, a little bit higher than we see in some of the other agencies throughout California. So overall, you're a little bit higher, but you're not in the upper echelon of the really high costs. So you're a little bit above average, but not much. On the PEPRA side, we're seeing you right in the middle where almost everybody else is. 87% PEPRA plans having started in 2013, all having the same benefit structure, same contribution policies, are pretty much all mostly in the same place. We see that also in the contributions, where you're 8.1% of pay. And again, as your workforce transitions, the longer service people who are in the Classic leave, new people get hired, come into Pepra, you're going to be going from the higher cost group to the lower cost group, but you will still have to pay that unfunded amortization because that's for past service. So now let's skip over a few pages and take a look at what looks like is going to be happening moving forward. So moving forward, we start looking at your unfunded liability. The green line here is where the projection of where things would be going if we did it just based on the June 30, 2022 actual evaluation reports. You'll notice that you are projected to become 100% funded in about 2037. That it's going to stay relatively steady to where it is for the next few years. The reason for that is because CalPERS spreads out the cost of investment losses. They don't make you pay the full cost of it right away. They have what they call a ramp, where you pay 20% of it the first year after the loss, 40% the next, then 60, then 80, then 100. What that does is that you're not paying the full interest cost in the first couple of years. So it doesn't let you start hitting into the principal. And you'll see the impact of that when we show you the contribution rates going up in order to keep things like this. On a funded percentage basis, your funded percentage, again, you're in the 70s right now. It's going to be moving up a little bit slowly the first few years, and then a little bit faster between about 2027 when things are mostly phased in, and 2037 when you're projected to be 100% funded. Again, this does not take into account the 115 trust that you set up, and I'll show that separately in a moment. Now, in order to do this, in order to have this progress, your contributions are going to be rising relatively significantly over the next 5 years. You were paying about 1.2 million in contributions in the 23-24 year. That's going to be going up to about 1.6 million by 2030, 2031. That is, again, primarily due to the big investment loss that occurred in the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. That was a year, if you remember, basically every asset class in the market lost money. And so CalPERS, like every big pension fund and every 115 trust, lost money during that year. It'll level off for a few years before some of your amortization bases are paid off, and then it'll start going down. Now, this contribution, as we'll see on the next slide, is a combination of your normal cost in orange, the cost for each year of service as it's earned, which is relatively steady. It goes up by pay, but it will come down as your population, again, shifts more from classic to Pepra. And the purple, which is the amortization payments, pay off the unfunded liability. You see how it rises dramatically from about 600,000 in the 22-23 year up to almost $1 million in a little more than $1 million in the 30-31 year, 31-32. So this is what's causing your contribution rates to go up, paying off the unfunded liability. Now, if you take into account the 115 trust, and you have, let me actually bounce back for a second to here. You have basically your general policy was to put an additional 350,000 per year into the 115 trust, into SEPT, with 2/3 of it in the more aggressive, or not actually aggressive, the conservative strategy 1, and 1/3 of it into the even more conservative strategy 2. In total, you have about 7.3 million, almost 7.4 million as of June 30, 2023 in that 115 trust. So when we take that into account, you see that your unfunded liability, instead of being about 10 million, really only about 2.5 if you take that into account. If you take it into account, by 2026, in total, you will be 100% funded. Now, this graph assumes that you will go back to making the $350,000 a year contribution into 115 trust for the next couple of years till you get to 100% funded. And then, at least for the purpose of this projection, it's just going to stay in there. We can have the discussion in a year or two when you get there, if that's really what you want to do. I don't think you may need to make that decision right now. Again, we see the same thing on funded percentage. Instead of being about 70% funded with the money from the 115 trust, you're about 95% funded, which is where you want it to be, and getting to 100% funded in 2026. So basically this is where you are. This will get you where you wanted to go in the time period you wanted to get there. Takes another year or two of additional contributions to the 115 trust, and then you'll be in a solid position and sort of prepared for bad things that might happen in the market or in assumptions. Any questions on the pension side?
Ira, for the Evelyn Wood version of yesterday's meeting.
No, I don't have questions. I'm really happy to see this. I didn't like it, the report before this, but now that we got our trust money in there, I'm feeling better.
It looks really good once you throw in the 115.
That was the right thing to do.
Any questions, Ira? We're good.
Okay, then let's skip over to the OPEB. And the screen, there we go. And again, just a reminder, OPEB is an acronym that stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits, which basically means post-employment benefits other than pensions. In your case, it's basically your retiree health plan. Where you are as of the most recent actuarial evaluation, which is measured as of June 30, 2022, the same date as the CalPERS valuation, but is used in your disclosure for the financial reporting for the year ending June 30, 2023. You had an unfunded liability of about $820,000, which made you 58% funded. Now, you should not be concerned that this is significantly lower than what you saw on the pension side. The OPEB plan, you started funding a lot later than you started funding the pension plan. The pension plan you had to fund from the time you started your agency and were in CalPERS. And the 58% puts you ahead of most agencies throughout California. Also, as I show you the projection, we'll show you how you are very close to getting to your target of getting to 100% in the next few years. Benefit payments cut in the upcoming year. We expect benefit payments in total to be about $45,000. There's also a bookkeeping entry, what the accounting standards refer to as implicit benefits. Those are basically, that takes into account the fact that as people get older, they tend to use more healthcare. So if we took into account the cost of healthcare by age, your older people, meaning your retirees, would be more expensive than your younger people, your active employees. CalPERS charges the same thing for all of them up to age 65. So there's basically a hidden cost by having older people included rather than just all young people. That hidden cost has to be accounted for, but doesn't come out in terms of cash flow. So it's just basically, you're paying your benefits for active employees. It happens to be built in there. And the CalPERS premiums as a whole tend to be, even with that taken into account, much more cost effective than if you tried to get negotiate the benefits on your own. So moving forward, let's skip ahead to see where things are going. I do want to also talk about the fact, a reminder on your enhanced benefits, because that's a critical part of all this. You had a basic benefit structure that is paid for by the district. That was given to all the long-term employees, the people who worked for the district, retired directly from the district at an age of at least 55 and had at least 20 years of district service at retirement. The benefit that they got was a combination of the PEMCO minimum. There's $100-something a month that's required just to be part of the CalPERS Health given to retirees, plus 40% of the difference between the full premium or the least expensive premium that is there and the PEMCO minimum. And the payment that you were covering would end at Medicare. eligibility. So once they're eligible for Medicare, they take care of Medicare, and it's just the PEMCO minimums. So the enhanced benefits, which are employee funded, the eligibility became a little more lax. So they still have to retire directly from the district at age 55, but now they only need to have at least 5 years of district service at retirement. The benefits themselves, depending on how long they've been there, if they get the PEMCO minimum plus, they've been there at least 10 years, 50% of the difference between the full premium and the PEMCO minimum. 15 years, they get 75% of the difference. And at 20 years, they get the full amount. So the full amount is paid from the trust. And the payment period continues for life, not just to age 65, not just to Medicare, but continues on. Now, the employees have agreed to pay for the full cost of that. And the way we figure that out is we calculate the amount that you would pay if it was just the basic, and the amount that it gets paid for the whole benefit. And that difference then gets spread out among the number of active employees, which is 33 in the latest actuarial evaluation, and divided by the number of pay periods to determine how much they pay per pay period. That's gets recalculated every 2 years when we do a full valuation. What we found is, it was originally $109 in 2020. It got lowered to $88 per pay period in 2022. And again, because of good experience, lowered again to $78.75 per pay period beginning in 2024. So let's take a look at where you are in terms of funding. And one of the things to notice on this graph, contributions coming in, because there are, again, 33 active employees are paying every pay period. Very few people have retired under this. That's the orange, the payments. So a lot of money is coming in. The whole goal of this is to collect the money while they're working, to be able to pay for them while they're retired. And it's moving in that direction and moving relatively well. So again, in terms of funding, in 2021, this district contributed 100,000 into the trust, and the employees contributed 86,000. 21-22, the district contributed 100,000, the employees contributed another 75. 22-23, you up that amount to 280,000, and the employees were contributing another 79,000. Again, we had bad experience. You wanted to make sure that you hit your target of getting to 100% funded by 2027. So moving forward, we're assuming, and what you've been doing is you've been making the benefit payments for the current retirees right now, and you were going to continue making those payments till they were 100% funded, and can put that 280,000 in till you got there. And then once that happens, the district contributions get lowered to the actuarially determined contribution, and the benefit payments get paid from CERBT. So let's look at how that works out. What we see here in so this year and next year, you'd be making the benefit payments in purple and making the additional 280,000 a year payment this year and next year. And then you will have hit 100% funding, and the contributions would go down, your contributions would go down to the actuarially determined amount, which is pretty close to the benefit payments, about 90,000 each year. So significant savings. You're almost at the point where you're at 100% funding. And we see that here, the unfunded liability, which we're showing about 800-something thousand, dropping in 2023, projected to drop to about 500,000, down to about 200,000 in 2024, and be gone in 2025. So you will have hit 100% funding, as we see in this screen, by 2025. So you are on target, you are on track to hit the targets that you have been looking to get to over the last few years. Any questions about this?
I'm wondering about what was the CalPERS investment return for 2023?
For 2023, they initially announced a return of 5.8. When they take into account the private equity, it got up to 6.1.
Okay.
So it was much better than the previous year, but a little bit short of their target. In this year, 2023-24, as of mid-year, they were ahead of target, ahead of where they were. Very strong third quarter, and January was a very good month for them. So as of now, they're in good shape, but a lot can happen in the next few months.
Thank you.
Well, I have a comment. We didn't, I'm pretty sure that we didn't guarantee to pay $280,000 a year. We made a one-time payment of $280,000. We may decide to continue that, but we didn't agree to continue for $280,000 a year. That's what my memory. Anybody else?
What do you think, Felicia?
I believe that Director Gaffney is correct, but I would have to go back to my my notes. I believe it was a one-time contribution that
Yeah.
was decided by the board at that time, and that we would have this presentation, as I was mentioning earlier,
And then
a
bring it up
little
next meeting?
earlier, right? A little earlier in the year. So February now here instead of April, when we normally receive this information, so that we can better prepare for the upcoming budget.
Okay. It's generally a good idea to agree that Tom said what he is correct. It's generally wise to say that your memory's good, because it generally is.
That mess everything up.
Okay,
Is it?
and I, at the finance committee, I was confused and I still don't understand it. PERS doesn't hold any of our money for OPEB. It's all in that the one with the B in it,
The SERPT,
served. Yeah.
right, which is administered by CalPERS, but is not really the CalPERS trust.
Yeah, we invest it there. It's a 115 plan, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, so
right, you
all
can
of the
stop
money
sharing.
that we have goes into that investment plan. So that's why the summary that staff did on the front, I was saying, well, what about our SERPT calculation? Well, the total amount, our fiduciary net proceeds, is all in that 115 trust.
Correct. The fiduciary net position, yes.
So what do we have to do? This is for information.
This is information only, just you can receive the report, tell staff that you'd like to maintain the, as close to 100% funding as possible. We'll present the draft budget to you in May. We'll let you know what what that contribution is for the coming fiscal year at that
Yeah.
point in time.
And we can decide upon it then.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. And
And
certainly our contributions have made a big impact,
Oh.
favorable financial impact on our district, I think, for both the pension and OPEB.
If
Thank you,
there's
Ira.
no more comments. Thank you, Ira.
Okay, happy
Ira,
Valentine's Day to
Great
all
job.
of you.
Thank you. Thank you
Happy
very much.
Valentine's Day.
Mark will lead us
Thanks,
in
Ira.
some calisthenics. Mark's not listening.
So let's see,
Oh, yeah, thank you. Point of information, the clerk of the board has pointed out that we would like the board to accept the pension, the actuarial reports as recommended in the staff report. So please, if you would accept the fiscal year
Do I hear a
23
motion
defined.
to do that?
I move we accept the fiscal year 2023 defined benefit pension and OPEB actuarial reports as presented. As presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item 17. Study session, sewer rates, capacity charges, and permit fees.
Very good. We have Mark Hildebrand here waiting patiently. I'll just introduce the item briefly. We're about a month ahead of the last time we did a 5-year rate adoption process. And so we're grateful to Mark. I look back at the timeline, and 5 years ago, you hired him out of a competitive process. in October of the previous year. This year, we recommended hiring him because he did an excellent job for us last time, and it was in September, so it was a month early. And here we are in February when he did a similar presentation in March 5 years ago. So we have met with the finance committee and discussed some details about potential sewer rates, but also this time we have capacity charges and permit fees alongside the sewer service charges. So it's all in one package where we had split it up into two different, about 6 months apart last time. So thank you, Mark Hildebrand, for sticking around this evening. And with that, unless you have anything else to add, Felicia.
No, thank you. We're looking forward to hearing Mark's presentation tonight. Thank you.
Yes, and thanks to the finance committee for all your input into the process so far. Mark.
Great. Thank you for having me here this evening. It's been a pleasure. And as Steve mentioned, you're one of my first clients that I had when I started my company over 5 years ago. And it's been a great ride. And I appreciate the role that you guys helped in getting me on my feet. So today we'll be covering the rate study and the capacity charge study. Next slide. We will, so these slides we've covered with the finance subcommittee. So we've vetted a lot of these results, and I think that we have some strong findings to show. So I'll give you a refresher on the process that goes into setting rates, and talk about some of the key things that have changed since the last study. One of the benefits of hiring the same consultant is that, well, I guess I could have done it even if I hadn't done the last study, but I was really had some insight into what the thinking was 5 years ago when we set the rates for the last 5 years, and we're able to do some forensics on what came to pass and what didn't come to pass in terms of the projections that we made. And that helped inform the projections that we're going to make for the next 5 years, because we don't have a crystal ball. And so the closer we can get to forecasting what's going to happen over the next 5 years helps us to set rates more accurately. So we'll share some insights on what we learned over the last 5 years. We'll talk about what we put into the financial models going forward, some of the results, and then I'll cover the capacity charges and the permit fees. Next slide. So when we set rates for water or sewer, there are three basic steps. Are these three: revenue requirements, cost of service, and rate design. So the revenue requirements is really just a financial plan. You look at all the revenues coming in and all the expenses going out, and you develop a forecast of how much those expenses are going to change and how much you need to increase your rates in order to cover those expenses. And that can include a debt strategy, which is not the case for Ross Valley this time around. But so that's the revenue requirements. And then once you understand how much rate revenue you need from your customers, you start looking at how those different customers behave and how they drive your costs and how you can allocate costs to them so that you can equitably recover costs from your different types of customers. And then the rate design is decisions on how exactly their bill is going to look in order to recover that revenue. Next slide. So looking back at what we did in 2019 and what came to pass, the last year's operating costs were 9% lower than what we thought they would be back in 2019, which is interesting because that 9% comes from CMSA costs being 3% lower and operating costs being 4% lower. So to me, this tells the story of staff doing a great job of controlling costs and staying below what we thought would be inflation. We assumed that costs would go up with inflation, and staff was able to keep costs below that. So that's a good story. Revenues ended up being a little bit higher than what we projected. Your rate revenue was actually 2.3% lower, which probably came from the drought and reduced water sales. But property tax was 10% higher, which should come as no surprise because property taxes really went through the roof over the last 5 years in this area. And so that the net impact was a little bit higher revenue than we had anticipated. Capital spending was actually ahead of plan, which is amazing. If you told me that a district this size was trying to spend $89 million in 5 years, I'd say good luck. And the district managed to deliver $92 million of really strategic projects using some debt financing to do it. But and in the middle of a pandemic. So really impressive delivery of capital spending and reinvestment in infrastructure over the last 5 years. And the final result is that your reserves are right where we had hoped they would be back in 2019. So pretty feel-good story in terms of the performance of the district over the last 5 years relative to the plan. Next slide. So when we start the financial plan, we start by looking at where the cash balances are. And I won't go through all these numbers, but you can see that your unrestricted cash is about $12 million. And then you have some restricted cash as well, which is $9 million. And we'll show the projection of how that revenue will be spent. Some of that won't be touched at all. The restricted funds won't be touched, but the operating fund and cash fund will be drawing down and then building back up. Next slide. In terms of where your revenues stand right now, about 70% of your revenue comes through your service charges, about 25% come through property taxes, and then miscellaneous revenue is the last 4.5%. Next slide. On the operating side, so this shows your operating expense and your debt service. So this isn't all your expenses. This does not include capital spending, which you can't really do a pie chart for capital spending because it changes so much from year to year. But you spend about, a third of your money on salaries and benefits, about another third on your cost to pay for treatment at CMSA, and then about a quarter in debt service and then other miscellaneous expenses. In terms of what we are projecting going forward, like I mentioned before, we don't have a crystal ball, but we can look at what has happened historically and what we hear in the news. Salaries and benefits, we're expecting to go up a little bit. So historical inflation has been 3% if you look at the last 100 years or so. And so we expect salaries and benefits to go up a little bit faster than that. Insurance has been on a tear recently, and I am under the impression that it's not quite done adjusting whatever it's trying to adjust. So we have that 6% per year. Utilities at 4%, which might be a little low. We see PG&E going up by double digits in some places. But we stuck with 4% there. And then CMSA 4.5% based on projections that they've provided. Next slide. So here's your capital spending. So this is a very different picture than what we saw in 2019. 2019, we saw this huge spike in capital spending from a few big projects that needed to be debt financed. At this point, the district has gotten to where we were hoping, which is a more steady stream of capital spending without all the spikes, and being in a position where you could cash finance those projects and not issue more debt. And so you can see over the last couple of years, a lot of that large capital spending was debt financed, the dark color. And over the next 10 years, we're expecting a pretty steady stream of over $10 million a year and all being cash financed. So again, another good story of the district getting to where it was trying to get, which is a pay-go model for delivering capital spending. Next slide. In terms of how much money you're trying to keep in your reserves over time, your policies say that your operating and maintenance fund balance should be about 6 months of operating budget, which is about $10.5 million this fiscal year. That your emergency reserve should be around $2 million, 10% of operating or $2 million. So in this case, 10% of operating is 2.1. So that's where that target is. And then the capital improvement reserve, which would be 50% of your annual forecasted capital spending, which is, like I said, just over $10 million a year. So the target would be about $5.5 million a year. The top two reserves I consider to be minimum reserve levels. So those are reserves that you never want to plan to go below. You might have to go below them, but in terms of developing a plan, you never want to plan to go below those minimum reserves. But the capital improvement reserve is a reserve that's designed to be drawn down and built back up in order to, formulate a plan over the course of 10 years. And you'll see that we'll do just that. We won't go below that those two minimum reserves, but we will be drawing down on the capital reserve and then building back up and trying to reach that by the end of the 10 years. Next slide. And here we go. So in this slide, the top, the background green shows your revenue. So the dark green at the bottom is your miscellaneous revenue. Most of it, that's tax revenue. The middle, the light green in the middle is your existing rate revenue. And then the dark green at the top that increases over time is the additional rate revenue that we'll get from the proposed rate increases. The proposed rate increases are shown at the bottom. So it's 4% per year for the next 4 years, and then 3% for the 5th year. And then we forecasted that you'll be about 3.5% in years 6 through 10, although we're not adopting rates for 6 through 10. We're just looking to adopt rates for the next 5 years. Back up to the top chart, the columns represent expenses. So the dark blue is your operating expense, the hash blue is your debt service, and then the light blue is your pay-go capital. And the way to read that is anytime the background is higher than the columns, that's a year where you have a surplus, where you're setting money aside, and vice versa. When the columns are higher, that's a deficit year. So you can see the middle lines there. The solid black line is your minimum reserve, and you can see and the red line is your projected reserve. So the red line never goes below that minimum reserve target, as I talked about. And then the dashed line is that target reserve level that we're working to get back to. We don't fully complete it after 10 years, but we get pretty close, and a lot can change over the next 5 years. So we'll reassess, but you're moving towards it in year 6. And that's the main point. So that's the end of the financial plan. I'll just pause for a second. Any questions about the financial plan and the assumptions that went into the projections?
No.
Great.
Well, we know last time we heard 3.5%. So you've noticed that looks like 4% for 4 years now. And then 3.5.
But
for the
yeah,
last year.
4 years at 4%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that changed from
And then 1 at 3.5.
last time we met because of some new costs that were identified in the last week.
And in our workbook, it's 3 years at 4, but we had some discussions at finance. And so it's, just make sure the board knows that.
Yeah. Thank you. The board clerk's reminding me that the presentation that was published in the board packet is a little bit different than the one that Mark is presenting to you tonight.
Also on page 16, we've got a proposed rate of 4%, 25, 4%, 26, 3.5, 27, 3.5, 28, 3.5. It's on board packet 165.
Yeah, that was a typo
Okay.
for 1 year,
That is a typo. This is a draft report.
working draft.
Okay.
Thank you.
Because it showed it here. Look, you'll see
Yeah, that's
that's
Oh.
3 4s.
Yeah, that table was a clerical error. I apologize.
And now it's 4 4s.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's 4%.
Right, Steve,
for the
you
next
said
4
you were
years.
right in the past tense.
I like the 3.5s better, but whatever.
Things are changing on the ground all the time.
Yes, some of those were clerical errors and some of them were new costs that were recognized in the last week. But the recommendation at this point is 4% per year for the next 4 years, and then 3.5 in the 5th year. Next slide. So in terms of your rate structure, we aren't proposing to change your rate structure at all, though it's being updated with new inputs, but the general structure is staying the same. So currently you charge based on EDUs, for dwelling units for residential, and EDUs that are assigned based on winter water usage for commercial. Commercial is broken into high strength and domestic strength. And then there's a different rate depending on where customers are located, whether they're in Ross Valley and Larkspur, due to tax contributions. And I have another slide that speaks to that in a moment. Well, here it is. So if you live in the Ross Valley service area, you pay property tax that's identical, well, not identical, but very similar to the property tax that's paid in Larkspur. The difference is that in the Ross Valley service area, that property tax goes to the benefit of the district, Whereas in the Larkspur service area, that same property tax that's being paid by the customers is going to a different,
On Larkspur.
to Larkspur, to the city of Larkspur, I believe, right? And so they receive
Schools.
services from the city for other things that we don't know where that, but that's going to serve their residents in different ways other than sewer service. And so the rates recognize the fact that the Ross Valley service area customers are contributing more to the district through their property taxes. And so that difference is shown in their rates. And the amount that they're paying has changed proportionately since 2019 because of the increase in property taxes that I mentioned earlier. And so we're updating that to be per EDU per year, it's $537 difference. The current difference is $500. So it's a $37 increase in the credit given to the Ross Valley customers.
Per EDU.
Per EDU per year. Other details, one single family is 1 EDU, a single family with ADU is 1.5. These are all the same policies that you had before that we validated, and they should remain the same. The commercial 1 EDU is 215 gallons. We're proposing to update that, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. And then the other change is for commercial minimum, the current policy is to charge 0.75 EDUs for commercials that have de minimis water usage. And we're updating that to be 0.77. And the idea is that we're charging them based on the cost incurred. And those customers, there's certain costs that those customers don't create for the district. So they aren't charged quite as much when you don't send any flow, but they do still need to pay the fixed charge, the 0.77, because there's a lot of services that the district continues to provide, even if that account isn't actively using the sewer system, the maintenance and the upkeep of the entire system, and the fact that it's ready for them to use it whenever they're ready to start creating wastewater again.
Mark, I'm not sure if they use minimal water, they get 1 EDU.
Yes, I'm sorry. Correct. Yeah. So if they use any wastewater, if they're active, they get 1. And if
Yeah.
they use no water at all, then it's 0.77. Thank you. Yeah. In terms of the assignment of EDU, the assignment of EDUs to commercial, historically, the district has used 215 gallons per day of water usage as being equal to 1 EDU. And this dates back to a 2014 study, which was done by a different consultant. And we looked at those numbers back in 2019, and we looked at the wintertime water usage. And so 215 gallons is supposed to represent how much water a single family home uses during the winter. We looked at the historical trends, and even basically the amount of water that residential customers are using during the winter has been going down steadily over time with the use of more efficient fixtures and appliances and whatnot. And so we're proposing to update this number down to 205 gallons, which is also more in line with what other neighboring districts are using for EDU assignments. Just back to that slide for one moment. One thing to keep in mind is that this is going to increase the bill for commercial customers, but they're not going to, this 4.8%, you're not going to see on the next slide when I show how much their rates are going to go up by, because their rate will be one thing, but the pace at which they get that rate is going to be accelerated because they're going to get EDUs more easily because they only need 205 gallons to have 1 EDU instead of 215. So on the next slide, I'm going to show what the rate increases are, which will be 4%. But they will, when they actually get their bill, it's going to be 8.8% because it's going to be the 4% plus this 4.8%. So just to make sure that's clear. Next slide.
A real quick question, clarifying question, Mark. When we were looking at our neighboring agencies, wasn't it true that our assumption on gallon per day was among the highest?
Yes.
And so I think that was part of our, staff's review of this was if we go down a little bit, we're more in line with our neighboring agencies. Right now, we appear to be one of the highest in
Yes.
Marin.
Yeah.
And so it has an impact, as Mark points out, in full disclosure, of having an adjustment year for our commercial ratepayers. But it could be argued that our commercial ratepayers are paying less in our district than the other districts, proportionately,
That is correct.
because of this assumption of water use that's kind of high. The real numbers floated around. A drought that was quite low, but they were floating around in the high, like the 180, 170 or something like that. So this is a modest reduction intended not to have too large of an impact on our commercial customers, but recognizing they're probably getting a bit of a slight economic advantage in our district compared to other districts at this time because of this artifactually high assumption on water use.
I thought we were billing them, especially restaurants, based on water usage from MMWD. So what is the EDU number or the 205 gallon per EDU?
It's their consumption divided by 205.
Oh, okay. Thank you. The math man.
And I mean, it's an interesting detail within rates because you could say, oh, commercial customers over there pay, $100 per EDU, and here they pay 150 per EDU. But that math isn't saying, well, what's an EDU? How quickly do you rack up EDUs? And so the as Steve pointed out, it is the numbers, the EDU assumption here, Ross Valley, is noticeably higher. And so this is an effort to get both in line with, most important to just get in line with what the actual data shows rather than how you compare to others, because how you compare to others isn't the most important thing. What's more important is how your residential customers are behaving and making sure that this number is consistent with that. But it also gets us more in line with them at the same time. So killing two birds with one stone. Next slide. So here's bill impacts, and I'm showing it for years 1 and 2 because in year 1, there's some cost of service adjustments that are being made. We made some adjustments with the EDUs. We made that property tax adjustment. And so different types of customers are going to be affected slightly differently in year 1. But then in year 2, as you can see, everybody gets the same 4% increase. So for example, single family home in Ross Valley in year 1 is going to see a 2.2% increase, whereas a single family home in Larkspur is going to see a 3.7% increase. So there's slight differences in how these different types of customers will be affected in year 1. But in years 2, 3, 4, and 5, they'll all be affected the same way.
The overall rate increases that we were seeing that were going to be 4%.
Correct.
Is a combination of all these.
Correct.
So, okay.
And and then the other thing that's sort of buried in here that I mentioned earlier is that it's all the commercial accounts, are showing 2%, 4%, 3%, 6%. You have to add the 4.8% on top of that. That's what they're actually going to see on their bill because their rate's going up by this percent, but their EDU number is going to go up as well. And so you have to compound those two things.
So what you're really doing is you're increasing sewer service charge revenue by 4%.
Yes.
And now you're showing us how it's distributed,
Correct.
how that 4%, and it impacts customers differently in the first year,
That's right.
not in the second. Yeah, okay.
Right. Here's a survey of the region for a monthly rate for a typical single family home. So you can see towards the bottom of the middle of the pack for your Ross Valley customers due to that property tax. And if you look at those other districts that you are next to, a lot of them also receive property tax. And then Larkspur, I would say, is at the top of the middle of the pack. So switching gears to capacity charges. So capacity charges are, charges paid by developers for new accounts that join the system. And it's to make sure that they pay for the value of the system that they're joining, that the existing ratepayers have all invested in and contributed towards and developed over time. So when you join a system, there's a value. It's like joining a club. And the last study was done in 2019. And we updated that at the time to add details about ADUs. Next slide. There's two approaches to doing capacity charges. You can do it with the buy-in approach or the incremental approach. In 2019, we used the buy-in approach and we proposed doing that again this year. I know it's a long meeting. I can explain the difference between the two, but I think that you guys are probably familiar, so I'll move on. Next slide. So the reason that we're using the buy-in approach, the reason it's appropriate is because you have enough capacity to serve your existing customers. You don't need to build new capacity to serve them. And so it makes it the appropriate methodology. Next slide. When we do the buy-in approach, you're basically looking at the value of your system, and we eventually get to the RCNLD, which is the replacement net less depreciation. So you're basically taking the original cost, you're escalating it to the cost to replace it in this year, and then you're reducing the value by depreciation. So if you build something for $1 million, 20 years ago, and now it would cost $10 million to replace, but it's halfway through its useful life, then the replacement cost net less depreciation would be $5 million. So your total system RCNLD is about $260 million. You can see in the gray down there, just for sake of comparison, your RCNLD was $167 million back then, and that shows very clearly the $90 million of an infrastructure that you just put into your system. Next slide. So you take that 260 million, you subtract your outstanding debt because you don't want those people paying that debt twice. It's just a way to avoid double charging those customers. Then you add in your cash reserves because that cash is the same as, $16 million in the bank could be a $60 million pump station. So you add that value in, you divide the total by your existing capacity, which is the assumed capacity of your system at build out. And you yield a capacity charge, which is dollars per EDU of $7,801. Your current charge is $7,444. So it'd be an increase of about $350 or so. Next slide. So for new connections, you always charge at least one EDU. If they have more than 23 fixtures, then you divide that minimum EDU by 23. The cost per fixture in excess of 23 fixtures is $339. So remodels pay basically $339 per fixture. And ADUs have special rules due to state law. Next slide. There's 4 different types of ADUs. Type 1 and type 3, you're not allowed to charge them a capacity charge per state law. For type 2 and type 4, you can. And again, it's based on the $339 per fixture that you charge them.
Is that a type 2 expansion of the structure?
There, and that looks like it's a type 2.
Yeah. So they get a charge.
Is that your place, Steve?
But like for a new ADU, it's a real break because they're small, and instead of charging them 23 plumbing fixture units automatically, we only count up the number they have. And remember, those people that came in, they had like 8 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
So, we gave them a break.
Right. Yep. Next slide. So quick survey of what other districts are charging. You do have some of the highest capacity charges in the region. A lot of these folks have not updated their capacity charges in quite some time. When I go on the website, it's clear that they haven't done a study in 10 or more years. But you can see the comparison there of neighboring utilities and the capacity charges they have. Next slide. In terms of permit fees, these are fees that are really to recover the costs of staff labor associated with issuing permits, with going out and doing inspections, processing paperwork. And so the way we do this is we get the fully burdened hourly rates for your employees. And then I sent out a form asking, how many minutes does it take for you to process the paperwork associated with this, or how long does it take to do an inspection? We also included some truck costs associated with driving and that type of thing. So we updated these fees. You can see that some of them actually went down a little bit. You can see new connections is dropping from $594 down to $568. This is because we previously had assumed that there need to be 2 inspections for certain types of permits. And the reality is that you don't always need 2 inspections. And so we decided, let's just charge them for 1 inspection and then clarify the language in the ordinance to make it more clear that the additional inspection will be charged when you need to. So the additional $237 will be charged if a second inspection is necessary. But that way, when it's an easy project that can be done with 1 inspection, we don't want to charge them unnecessarily for two inspections. Next slide. That's my last slide. So presentations, as I mentioned, we presented this information a couple of times to the Finance Committee. They were very helpful in giving us feedback and helping us, polish the recommendations. We're here letting you digest this information in this meeting, and then we'll come back on March 20th to present this as final recommendations and ask the board for direction to allow staff to send out the 218 notice, at which time we'll wait for the 45 days to transpire, and then we'll hold the public hearing on May 22nd.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
What's a pool drain in permit? Do we,
If you want to get rid of all your water and
When
fill it up
some-
again,
When somebody wants to drain their pool. Yeah, it has to go through the sewer system. It can't put it in the storm drain.
It has,
okay.
No, well, they shouldn't.
it has chlorine in
That's right.
My neighbor dumped, well, never mind.
This was really wonderful, and it was so nice that we were familiar with the format. I mean, I
Mhm.
can't believe it's been 5 years.
Right.
Is that right? But just the fact that the format is all the same. And I remember dialing those little numbers up and down. Yeah, so thank you. Very easy to understand.
The other good thing we do with our connection fee is we index it to the engineering news record index, so we don't let it go fallow,
That's right.
even if we don't do a study.
year.
Yes, we adjust it. Yeah, and so in some cases it goes down a little bit.
Right.
If it goes down, it goes down.
it's also helpful that we know what CMSA's rates are going to be for the next 5 years, because
Yes.
we've already published those over there.
Those weren't an assumption. That's data, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
You don't need anything from us, right?
No, just come up with different ideas later.
Okay, let's move on. Thank you so much, Mark.
Mark.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.
Thanks for sticking with us all.
3 hours.
Okay, item number 18. Consideration of authorizing the general manager upon review and approval of legal counsel to execute a settlement agreement and mutual general release with Larkspur Corte Madera School District that includes a proposed lot line adjustment at the Larkspur Pump Station 14 and a waiver of claim of past sewer service charges in the amount of $142,740.40.
Well, thank you.
Moore.
Thanks, President Borstein and board members. Bringing this item to you tonight on Valentine's Day because of our great relationship with the school district. They were a joy to work with on the Pump Station 14 project. They were really helpful as we were getting that underway and open-minded to this idea we had to do a lot line adjustment. The core of the dispute and the history is all laid out in the staff report, going back to the year 2008. But the core of this really came down to the positioning of the pump station facilities on the property in relation to the recorded property boundary between the school district and it wasn't actually Ross Valley Sanitary District. It's the city of Larkspur's lands because the city of Larkspur originally built the pump station 14. So this dispute centered around a finding that they made in 2008, and they had talked about it in the past. As I mentioned, there's a history with the school district and working with the sanitary district on issues of easements and where the force main's located and where buildings are located. And then the odors from pump station 14, which were really improved in the 2000s. And now with the latest technology, we've eliminated any sense of sewer odor around the building, which is fabulous. But there's this long history because we're really in close quarters. Okay, so the boundary between the city of Larkspur's lands, where this pump station lies, and the school district goes right through the pump station building. So the school district thought, when they were having difficulty making ends meet during the Great Recession of 2008, their maintenance supervisor thought maybe they could charge Ross Valley Sanitary District rent for the encroachment of that building over the recorded property boundary. Now, as I describe in the staff report, they proposed it, but our predecessors here at the district didn't accept it. There was no acquiescence or acceptance of that proposal. The school district went on to withhold those funds for several years. And so attachment B lays out the specific payment history. You'll see we did receive partial payments, but it's because the Larkspur School District has two schools in our district, Marin Primary and Hall Middle School. So they continued to pay the Marin Primary sewer service charge, but withheld the Hall Middle School sewer service charge for almost 10 years. So Corey got us the latest information, and in attachment B, you can see the actual payment history. And as going up to about the year 2018, as of 2019, Assistant General Manager Newhouse contacted them and let them know that no, they didn't have permission to withhold sewer service charges, and please resume payment of those lawfully required sewer service charges, but that we would work out an agreement. And so one was drafted. In the meantime, we did have the pandemic and we did have our Pump Station 14 project that we were cooperatively working with them on, but they agreed in principle to the idea of the lot line adjustment because it's an even trade of property. On attachment C, which is a color map, which is a board packet, page 270. That shows very clearly where we're proposing in the purple to increase the site, increase the property to what's actually the city of Larkspur, but it's under our use. And then the green sections are what are deeded over, or proposed to be deeded over to the school district. And we actually changed the fence line along the right portion, which is the eastern portion of this property. So there's a better sight line for motorists that are dropping off their middle school students in the morning. So when we did the project, we made some changes that better align with this proposed property boundary. And the school district was very happy about that. So this formalizes this agreement that's been in principle all of these years and makes it official from our standpoint as our agency and you as the board that you would accept as a compromise forgiving the debt of $142,740.40 with the understanding that any claims related to encroachment on property or any rent that would be due all those claims would be, what's the right term? The legal term?
Forgiven.
Waived. Thank you. Thank you very much. So this lays it all out, and this amount of funds is way beyond staff's level of authority. At over $100,000, the board needs to be able to approve that. If you do approve it, we will send that executed and signed agreement to the school board and their representatives to consider, because it has to be an agreement. And we will certainly keep you posted and updated as to how that goes.
So I just want, it says here clearly that full payments resumed in 2019.
Yes.
So this is forgiving a debt that was accrued between 2009 and 2018. And that's correct. It's not hurting our bottom line. Right, we've written it
No,
off. Have we written it off already, or is
have.
this the official writing?
We
writing it off?
have written it off.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the official
Mhm.
blessing of writing it off.
This is letting them know that we're giving them a gift. Okay, got it.
Want to take a motion?
Sure. Sounds good. Okay, go for it, Mary.
I move that we authorize the general manager, upon review and approval of legal counsel, to execute a settlement agreement and mutual general release with Larkspur Corte Madera School District that includes a proposed lot line adjustment at the Larkspur Pump Station 14 and a waiver of past sewer service charges in the amount of $142,740.40.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Paul's not here to give us the personal operations report.
Yes, Paul is celebrating Valentine's Day.
Oh, good for
Aw.
Paul.
He was feeling fine. Now he's feeling fine.
So,
Okay,
I can.
we can do the Evelyn Wood one. How many sewer spills were there? No,
There
just
was
kidding.
one sewer spill. You can see that the flows come up during wet weather. It's interesting, as we track the percentage of the pump station flow, Kentfield Pump Station on page 277, is a higher percentage of overall flow. It was down to 60%. Now it's in January, it's back up to 67%. It's interesting to watch those dynamics. We're back up to more than 33,000 gallons of recycled water use this month. It's not on the graph, but it's for February or for January. So that's back to normal. As you thumb through the report, I do point out we did have a spill. It was actually, it was a serious spill. It was a category 1 to surface water. It happened due to a clog in a pipe. It was actually a rehabilitated pipe that had been lined. So a 6-inch pipe had become a 5-inch pipe. And it's an annual cleaning frequency, but its latest cleaning was over a year from the point where the spill occurred out of a rod hole to the creek. So it's about 1,700 gallons made it into Larkspur Creek. So we actually, as corrective action, have a smart cover out there to have an early warning system. Obviously, we cleaned it. There's a upstream manhole whose channels we've modified to make it flow better and not have wipes and other things catch. So there are some specific things we're doing, and we're also taking the opportunity to review and have our CMMS tell us better if a pipe hasn't been cleaned according to its frequency. So there is an initiative that we've spearheaded as a result of this spill to really meet our mission of no avoidable spills through better targeted preventive planning. So it's a good wake up call that some things do fall through the cracks in our current system, and so we're very hopeful that these improvements in our preventive work might enable us to reach a goal of a performance goal of only 2 spills per 100 miles of system, which is the state expectation. And now that we've found this dimension of our planning that we can improve, we're looking at each other thinking, we might really be able to prevent spills much more surgically than before. So, it's frustrating, but we're as an organization responding, I think, with trying to develop the tools to be more sophisticated. So that's my long-winded discussion on that. But yeah, we're moving ahead. We still only have, I think, 5 spills for the year, right? Or 4. Okay, so we had another one this month. So small, category 4. So yeah, we're still doing quite well.
I'd like to see that. Did we do that in the annual report, the amount of spills by volume for the last 10 years?
Oh yeah, you actually can get that from the public website.
Really?
CWIX. It's public. The public. You can go into that state water board spill database and generate it. That's a.
I thought we did, yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, if you look at our annual metrics report, we have an elaborate.
Yeah.
It has maps and all that, and the number of spills and where the spills were located and how big they were. Yeah, that's right. So good. Any questions on the metrics report?
Nope. We have a community outreach annual report.
Yeah, this is, I know it's getting late and everything. This was something I really want to acknowledge our friends at Ardura putting this together. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it. I can zing through it. If you're interested, it's up to you. But there's a lot here as far as examples of how we've gotten the word out about our system.
I looked at it. It's wonderful, but I don't know that we need to review it as a board. Do you think so?
Yeah.
Thank you, though.
Yeah.
And I know what I know what we're doing these days.
It really is remarkable, and it's such a great presentation. And in terms of PR, we're just knocking it out of the park.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I guess things of note, I'll just point out that, and Christina Winnicke's taking a little bit more active role in our outreach and website maintenance with Courtney Buell moving on. We're appreciative of our clerk recognizing the role she can help us with. But there's a new branding. I mean, we have the same colors, right? With the gold and the orange and the blue. Well, there's a new light blue stripe I want to point out that's under 125 years of service. So there's a new twist on our branding that you'll see with our materials going forward. So when we do our rate study, our Prop 218 notice, you're going to see this new little splash of flair because we are celebrating 125 years. So I don't know. I thought that was worthy of note anyway. Okay.
Thank you, Christina.
We had the CSRMA.
Yeah, and this is for the board's information, for the public's information about our insurance pool and its performance. It's really a good story. It's in strong financial condition. Again, a reference for you to be able to look at, and their new initiative on reinsuring is in here and described. And so it's a great group to be a part of.
Jason's on the board.
Okay.
And then there's one last thing, which is if you're interested in the low income rate assistance program, the last 4th information item, 19D.
Address by address. So this was just a revised report because the board received the NDS report in January and then had asked about, well, where's the data regarding the low income discount program? And so they said, oh, we can include that. And so here it is. And that it will be given to you now every January going forward.
Yeah. And there's 187 individual, property owners that benefit from the low income rate assistance program.
Does our rate study take into account that Murray Park is going to go to full bore? There's 90 of them out there. It automatically caught it, don't you think?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I can circle back with Mark on that.
Yeah, because they'll get a hit.
Yeah, it's a great point in the process to ask that question. I think it's in there, but we'll double check.
Yeah.
Good night, Andrea.
Our next meeting is Our next meeting is March 20th, 2024 at 5 o'clock, right here. Same bat channel, same bat time.
All right, and have a great ski week.
Evening adjourned.